In 2016, we built an unbeatable operation that changed history. Now, we unveil our next breakthrough. The exclusive Trump 2020 app. This isn't just an app. This is your source for real news, not fake news. Straight from the campaign and the president himself. This is your direct line to give input on key campaign issues. Your portal to register voters. Host MAGA meetups. Your scheduler. Your application on becoming a Trump team leader.
Join millions and get a front row seat to our virtual events. Watch Team Trump every night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Earn points, get rewarded. Get the presidential photo. Oh, and did we mention this is your personal shopper too? So just to repeat, this isn't just an app. This is your tool to keep America great. Join the army for Trump and download the app today.
Trump campaign is now reaching voters online.
You are seeing the President of the United States. Look at the lines.
You join our movement.
A lot of President Trump supporters here.
Greatest movement in the history of our country. I'm fighting for you, and I love doing it with everything that I have. And I will never, ever stop. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. We will make America great again.
Welcome to Team Trump Online.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Black Voices for Trump Real Talk Online. I'm Katrina Pierson, Senior Advisor to President Trump's re-election campaign, and tonight we have an amazing show lined up for you. We are going to discuss how President Trump's response to the COVID-19 pandemic is protecting jobs for Black Americans. We'll talk about the fake news double standard and, of course, Sleepy Joe Biden's history of failure. Joining us this evening on The Real Talk, we have two of our very own Black Voices for Trump Advisory Board members, Stacey Washington and Dr. Robin Armstrong. Stacey, Robin, welcome to The Real Talk Online.
Thanks, Katrina.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here, and we have a lot to discuss, so let's dive right in. Dr. Armstrong, as a physician, you have been on the front lines of this pandemic. How has your personal experience been with regards to the president's response, and more specifically, the state and federal response in Texas?
Well, I think the president's response has been very, very good and very sound. I think it's saved lives, frankly. You know, the first and most important thing that the president has done is shutting off travel from China. You know, and this is something that met with rounds of criticism from the Democrats, from Joe Biden, from Hillary Clinton, from all up and down the Democrat Party about how it was xenophobic and everything. But what it was an America First policy that saved lives. And as a physician, I see that was instrumental in giving us time to prepare for the crisis that was coming at us. That number one. Number two, he's done a fantastic job at just organizing different groups of people, you know, the healthcare establishment, the business establishment. I think that it's been a all hands on deck effort that he has provided us and has made it possible for us to get the PPE equipment, the personal protective equipment that we as physicians need, that nurses need, that hospitals need, that nursing homes need to protect ourselves from the COVID-19 infection. He's provided the ventilators. In fact, we have an overabundance of ventilators now in those hot spots in New York State and New Jersey now. And so, you know, he's done a fantastic job. And I think that really he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. You know, so much of speeding up these therapeutic possibilities like remdesivir, hydroxychloroquine, just all these studies that are going on now with the FDA and approving these drugs and getting them used. I think it's huge. It saved American lives. It's been an America First policy, which has been his motto from the beginning. And so I'm really proud of how he's done.
Well, we are too. And, what we've noticed, what I've noticed personally throughout, even from the 2016 campaign is he usually turns out to be absolutely right, and everyone else figures that out later. Stacey, you've actually tweeted, to be clear, we can go to Lowe's, we can go to Home Depot, we can go schnucks into the liquor store, but we can't go to church. You seem to think that Democrats are using this crisis for what? Why don't you share with us what your tweet was about?
Well, Katrina, here in Missouri, we have a Republican-controlled legislature, but at the local level here in the county where I live, outside of St. Louis, we have Democrats in charge. And so Governor Parson has actually said May 4th, he's going to allow the state to reopen under DHSS guidelines that directly mimic those put forward by President Trump and the coronavirus task force. So you have this wonderful outline, this plan. You have, as the good doctor just shared, a lot of PPE now in the state of Missouri. The ventilators are up. The cases reached their peak over 2 weeks ago. So we want to go back to work and we want to go back to church. So they've opened 22 parks, I believe, out of hundreds of parks that we have, but they have not yet given us the ability to go back to church. So my problem with what the Democrats are doing is that, of course, it's political. It's not about helping Missourians to get back to work and to kind of make up for lost time, almost 2 months spent not working, not earning money, not having their businesses open. It's more for them about trying to stop President Trump from being reelected in a state that went for him by double digits last time. It was like 22 points we went for President Trump last time. The downdraft on those coattails was so amazing. It was like a rocket ship flying through the electoral politics of the state of Missouri. So they don't want that this time. They like to have control, but they don't know what to do with it when they have it. And so what we're seeing is the complete, it's like abandonment of what we need for what works for political expediency. And so that's what that tweet was about. And really, honestly, nothing has changed. In the intervening days, they have said we'll be on lockdown here in Missouri, in St. Louis County, indefinitely, Katrina. So no date, just indefinitely. Meanwhile, the rest of the state's going to open up next week.
Wow. I mean, you mentioned the political piece of it. And, one of the most common things that I hear is, this is the first time that we've seen a political party, punish the American people during a national crisis. Usually you see people coming together and, trying to stand as one. And for some reason, we're just not seeing this with the Democrats. They are so thirsty for power that they're willing to punish the American people. And I always like to remind people that before that, the American public was considered non-essential. They were called deplorables. And we see that playing out right now because they have this authority. So I have a question for you both. While President Trump is focused on putting America first, Joe Biden is spending his time defending China and their handling of this pandemic. He even remains silent when China blamed the U.S. military for spreading this disease. Why does Joe Biden continuously choose to protect China over the United States? Dr. Armstrong, let's start with you.
It seems to be just a continuation of what the Democrats have done for the last, 30, 40, 50 years. They seem to always take the side of our enemies. And it's really shameful. In China, as a physician, we were, I have COVID-19 patients that I've been caring for. And so we've been reading studies from China and reading studies from France. And there were studies as far back as early January in China. And so they already had a test, the test that we had to manufacture and develop. They already had that test in early January. So they knew that they were dealing with an epidemic probably as early as late October, early November. And so they knew about this months before they allowed the world to know about it. The World Health Organization, I'm sure, knew about this. And so China is responsible for the deaths of thousands, tens of thousands of Americans. And so it amazes me that the Democrat Party is defending them. And I saw an article out today, the media as well is defending them, coming out saying, that China and the processes that they use are an example for us. Well, it's a communist country, and so it's shameful. And Democrats have always sided with the communists. Certainly, Jimmy Carter sided with the Soviet Union, and they were a friend of them as well. And so it really is shameful. In this crisis, we have Americans coming together. We have our president bringing Republicans and Democrats together. Our president is providing ventilators for failed Democratic governors in New York and New Jersey. And so he's providing everything that they need. He's working well with California's governor. But at the same time, we have the national, the person who's going to represent them in the presidential election, Joe Biden, siding with China in this whole thing. It really is shameful, but it's par for the course for what they do and what they've done throughout history. And so I think that the American people realize that and see that and going to punish them for that in November. And so it's going to be it's shameful, but it's the same old song and dance that we've seen from the Democrats before, unfortunately.
It is, and that historical component, I think, is extremely important, because even if voters didn't realize that, they're seeing it play out in real time. And Stacey, Dr. Armstrong mentioned, Carter and the Soviet Union, and fast forward, you have Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Iran, the state sponsor of terrorism. Why is it that they side with America's enemies?
Well, Katrina, Dr. Armstrong brings that historical perspective, which means there's nothing new under the sun. We absolutely have seen them do this before. But what's so interesting about this to me is that they've married their love of foreign dictators to their hatred of President Trump for such a unique, it's like a mix we've never seen before, where they're actually former President Obama's wife, Michelle Obama, is doing this huge fundraiser to raise money for the World Health Organization, which is basically a PR organization for communist China. So the Chi-Coms use the WHO to push out information that is demonstrably false. So if it had not been for the WHO's refusal to simply say, we need oversight over this outbreak you've had in Wuhan and Hubei province, if they had said, look, we insist on this, then they could have contained the virus there and saved literally tens of thousands of lives. So President Trump took a very, very common sense response to that. He said, we're defunding you because bad actions deserve natural consequences. And the Democrats are, of course, screaming and losing their hair because they don't want the WHO or the Chi-Coms held responsible for what they've done. So it's a really unique thing to look at. And if you're not suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, you see that the president, number one, has the correct response. You punish people who kill your citizens. The Chinese didn't come here with guns and tanks and ships and kill Americans. Instead, they sent their citizens and our citizens who have family there back and forth on planes with this virus, and our weakest members of our society and unsuspecting Americans caught this virus, and a lot of them died because we were not prepared for this type of a spread. So we learned a lot here. I think the president has rightly highlighted a ton of different things that are going on with our huge federal bureaucracy and their unpreparedness. The unpreparedness of a lot of states not having any PPE or ventilators on hand, no preparedness for an emergency. And at every turn, as you mentioned at the top of the show, the president has demonstrated that he's ready and able to not only get us to where we need to be preparedness-wise, but to punish our enemies while having a soft, gentle hand towards Americans so that he can take care of us. And by the way, it's not actually the president's job to make sure that Missouri or Texas or any other state has PPE on hand. That is the governor's job. It's also not his job to tell us to stay home. It's his job to make outlines for stopping the pandemic. And then federalism says our governors decide what we're going to do. And it leaves it open to us to actually have local control. So I just hate to see the way the media keeps pounding on him for doing the right thing. And I hope he continues on. He's very strong in that aspect. He doesn't care what people say, which thank God, because he doesn't get any credit for all of the fantastic things he's done since we realized we were being attacked this way.
Absolutely. You mentioned the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, and, all I can think about is when we see her openly raising money for the World Health Organization, knowing what we now know, it makes you wonder what else was going on during the Obama-Biden administration. So thank you both so much for that insight. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Real Talk.
People are really looking for something. I think you have to go out and really work hard.
You've sort of become like a folk hero.
There are no better builders than we have in New York, and a big percentage of that is black and minority folks, and I'm very proud of it.
I say to the African American people that have to suffer, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it.
The black unemployment rate, the lowest in history.
1.3 million jobs, more than 1.3 million jobs added for African Americans. You talk about the First Step Act, thousands of people released from jail, 90% of them being African American.
And I want to thank our incredible president.
Funding for historically black colleges and universities. Opportunity zones, almost 9,000 of those in marginalized areas. This president has done more for African Americans in a matter of 2 to 3 years than any president in my lifetime.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Thanks to President Trump, criminal justice reform gave nonviolent offenders a second chance at life and the American dream.
He has given $100 million to HBCUs for scholarships and research.
And he has done all this for us in less than one term. Imagine what he can achieve with 4 more years.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
And welcome back to Black Voices for Trump, Real Talk Online. I'm Katrina Pierson, and back with us is Stacey Washington and Dr. Robin Armstrong. You know, we are all too familiar with the fake news media's constant defense of Democrats. And, you know, I call the press the political arm of the DNC. This has become painfully clear with their abusive treatment of one of their own. There is a representative in Michigan, the Detroit area to be specific. Her name is Karen Whitsett. She's a Democrat who made the mistake of thanking President Trump for his response and doing so in public. Dr. Armstrong, why are Democrats so blinded by their hatred for President Trump that they would attack someone from their own party from simply thanking the president whom she credits saved her life?
You know, clearly, it's clear that the Democrats don't really care. They're not really caring about people here. They're so fixated on this Trump derangement syndrome. They hate this president so much that he is the center of their universe. And they are wanting to destroy him. They're wanting to defeat him so badly that they can't even, they've lost all judgment. It really is shameful. You know, I think that it seems to me like the Democrat Party is the press is leading the charge. The press leads the charge, and the Democrat Party kind of follows behind them. And so it seems like the press is who we're fighting against, and the Democrat Party just does everything that the press gives them. And it really is, it's just a shame. This lady is giving her personal experience, and her personal experience is that she was very ill, and that she got medications that the president actually provide, you know, his talking about it actually gave more access to the medication. As a physician, I've used this medication very successfully on patients as well, and they've gotten better. And I've been attacked for that as well, which is shameful. And so the Democrat Party, they're using healthcare, they're using the health of individuals and people, you know, to try and make hay and attack this president, even at the expense of potential treatments for this COVID-19 pandemic. And so it's shameful to me that they would use politics and inject politics towards physicians, towards patients, towards people who are trying to treat others in the setting of a pandemic. That is the most shameful thing that you can do. People are dying. Tens of thousands of Americans are dying all over the United States today. You know, we've had 1 million people infected, you know, with COVID-19 in the United States of America. And the Democrat Party can't step back for 1 second. They have to blame the president. They have to make it his fault. any proposed therapy that he talks about, is you have to attack that therapy. It's amazing to me, and it's really shameful that they've done what they've done and what I've seen them do, Katrina, here in Texas and all over the United States, is they have dried up the access to medications that could potentially treat thousands of Americans and have an impact. They have made physicians all over the country fearful about prescribing medications because they're convinced they're going to get in trouble if they prescribe them. And so I believe that they're responsible for the death of many Americans as a result of that. And I think it's shameful. Attacking this representative in Michigan is just par for the course, unfortunately, for what they do. They attack people who are genuine, people who, she could have died. She could have died. And they're attacking her because she had the nerve to give credit to the president for allowing more access to the medication that saved her life. To me, that's just shameful. And so they do it because they're so deranged in their hatred. And, the Republican Party is the party of love. The Democrat Party certainly is the party of hate today. And I think that's unfortunate. I don't say that with pride or with glee. I say that with sadness, actually.
It's hate, but it's also evil if you truly think about it. I mean, these are people who have gotten well in the midst of this pandemic. Representative Whitsett's physician has used it on many patients. You've used it on many patients. And, so it's really disturbing when we see things like this. Just because they hate the person who makes this suggestion, they're willing to allow Americans to die. And, furthermore, it's like this is the administration also who supports the right to try. People should be able to try the medications that they believe will benefit them. And you and I both know, whether it's the placebo effect or an efficacy, people want to be well, they want to get better, and they have the right to do that in this country. And so, Stacey, whether it's hydrochloroquine or whether it's just the economy, there was another Democrat in Atlanta who came out and supported the president because of his economic policies. Obviously, everyone believes that he is the best person to get our country back because he's done it once, he'll do it again. Why are they insistent on even going after people in their own party just for speaking the truth?
Well, Katrina, it's election season. So Dr. Armstrong mentioned TDS, and it's real. I know when it first came out a few years ago, someone coined the term TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome. And I found it so comical, but it has been so prescient to see it actually develop into a real thing where people lose their cool and they become overheated. And this is a pure example of that. You have Karen Whitsett, who almost died. And so she gets invited to the Oval Office to basically, she's going to thank the president, which is coincidentally what we've all taught our kids to do. It's what your mom and my mom and Dr. Armstrong's mom taught us to do. When someone does something nice for you, you say thanks. You don't tell them, oh, no, I can't thank you because you're a Democrat. I mean, if I tripped and fell or was about to fall in a parking lot and the person who happened to help me up was President Obama, as much as I hate his policies and I still hate the way he lords all over the country, all over the world, really meeting with foreign dignitaries as if he's still president, I would definitely still say thank you because I don't like falling and I wouldn't want to hurt myself. So the idea that she can't say thank you to President Trump when he basically gave, it was like almost like permission for people across the country to do something that doctors have been doing since before I was alive, and that is prescribing off book, right? So Katrina, Dr. Armstrong probably has done this many times himself. You prescribe something that is meant for, let's say, heart disease to someone who has something else because it has been found through trial and error to work on that something else. You don't have to be a doctor to know that that's happened because I've had doctors prescribe things to me off book. So the idea that hydroxychloroquine is something horrible when it's been used all over the world to treat malaria and to prevent malaria for people who come from countries where it's not prevalent like here, it's just crazy that doctors would feel any kind of pressure not to prescribe it. But again, that's in a world where your life and my life and Dr. Armstrong's life matter more than politics, but not in this world, not in this realm we're living in now, which is we have to stop President Trump from being reelected. We have to have a downturn in the economy. According to HBO's Bill Maher, we need a recession because that's the only way we can stop Trump. Now, remember, Katrina, why would he say that? Worth multiple tens and maybe hundreds of millions of dollars. He owns many homes, some of them outside the United States. So if an economic downturn here ever got to the point where it was impossible for him to live the lifestyle that he loves, he could always leave. And a lot of the people that are currently lecturing us, Nancy Pelosi and her $22,000 refrigerators, which, by the way, I think are awesome. The ice cream collection, probably worth, a few $100s. Also a great thing for her. But for her to have her constituents living the way they do in San Francisco, subject to the types of conditions that they're under, and her to be living that way and have options to go abroad, she owns 4 or 5 wineries in California alone. It just puts to your mind that for some people, people aren't really people, like how the Chinese people treat the Uyghurs. They don't treat them like people. They're communists. They treat some people less than others. And the Democrats treat some people less than others. And so for them to censure Karen Whitsett is par for the course. It's what they do. It's the way that they operate. They have to punish her. She can't be black and cute and running around thanking the president. That looks really great in commercials. That also looks really great to people who are maybe looking up from their kitchen table, looking at their bills and wondering whose fault it is that they can't pay them because there aren't very many people in their state who are suffering from COVID-19. And those people look at the camera and their television and they see this cute black woman with an amazing voice saying thank you to President Trump. And Democrats are like, that's not an image we want projected into the kitchen tables of America. So they're going to punish her, which makes me absolutely, I'm like the first one with my hand up telling her, President Trump asks you to come on over and we want you over here too. You're super cute. You don't belong with them. You belong with us. You're smart. And now that your life has been saved, you probably have a few extra things you'd like to do electorally. So get over here to the party that will treat you as a person, not as a commodity or an access point to voters.
Yeah, it takes courage to do that. And, I spoke with her and just, congratulated her on that courage. And, we talked for a little bit, and for her, there wasn't even a second thought because she explained to me how she felt and she thought she was dying. And, when they tried this, she immediately got better. And all she could do was want to thank, her upbringing like ours, want to thank that person because there was this idea that there was help. Before, there was no hope. And so in her mind, this treatment provided hope for people, many of the people in her district, which, by the way, is being disproportionately impacted. And they lose sight of that some reason because she thanked the president for it. So I think it's very telling what we're seeing unfold now is just how far the Democrats will go to destroy our president and even our country to the point to where they're willing to let their own people die in the midst of trying to stop this president. And that is a very scary situation for Democrats. I do believe that their voters are paying attention and they see President Trump is trying to get help where it is needed the most. And we've had such an interesting news cycle this week. There's so much to talk about. But Stacey, I have to get your input on this. We talk about the news being sort of the political arm of the DNC and how they've always defended Democrats and the double standard that we see. And one really glaring example this week, as the Democrat Protection Agency that the press is a woman named Tara Reade. She has come forward with credible allegations of sexual assault against Joe Biden, of which have been corroborated over the last few days now. But the press simply won't ask questions about it, which all of us on this call know that if this had been a Republican, you would have seen looping coverage of this woman and her story and demands for the Republican to drop out of the race. But we're not seeing that, Stacey. Why is that?
Well, so Joe Biden, who we've all seen the video footage, we've seen the pictures, he sniffs babies, he sniffs women. He likes to massage people's shoulders when their husbands are standing nearby. Even when women cringe and pull away, he goes in for a second sniff. And that's when the cameras are rolling and he's in front of literally like 100 cameras. So what does he do when he's not in front of the cameras? Well, we really didn't know until Tara Reade came forward with her allegation. Now, I personally feel like if someone brings an allegation, there should be an investigation. And we should leave that to the people whose job it is to determine whether the facts support the bringing of an actual case by a prosecutor. I've always felt that way, not just because sometimes the people who are accused are Republicans, but because I'm married to a man, I have a son, I have a father, and I feel like men deserve the presumption of innocence just as we women have when we are accused of crimes. So that is the process by which you would bring charges against someone. But that's not the way it works in America anymore, because as we saw with Justice Kavanaugh back when he was a judge, he was treated to the guilty until proven innocent standard by Christine Blasey Ford and the Democrats. And so they said all women are to be believed. And we were told that the Me Too movement was going to revolutionize the way that women were treated, and that victims would feel free to come forward, and that men would be held accountable. And if the innocent until proven guilty standard had to be sacrificed on that altar to make it happen, then so be it. We, of course, protested, and we were treated to a spectacle like none other we've seen since Justice Clarence Thomas was treated to the similar treatment by Anita Hill. But that was over 20 years ago. So it was really, it was so painful to watch. It was so painful to watch, actually, the entire process from Christine Blasey Ford's, the glasses she wore with the Vaseline coating and the vacant stare, all of that, to the accusations themselves and the repetitive flogging of statements that had not been corroborated and the most disgusting scenarios described on television. Now we have Tara Reade, and it's supposed to be, soon to be, President Biden, right? He's been vice president. Now he has to be our president. And we're supposed to just buy this lock, stock, and barrel that he is innocent until proven guilty, and we should ignore her allegations. Now, I saw articles yesterday about Democrats now beginning to request that Joe Biden address the allegation. But how many months has she been out there with this allegation, and how much corroboration does it take before she is believed? So the Me Too movement doesn't have any teeth because it's a Me Too movement for Democratic women against Republican men. The fact that Harvey Weinstein was taken down after so many years in Hollywood and so much predation, so much rape and horrible allegations that turned out to be true is because Democrats were protecting him, because Hollywood is run by the Democrats and they protected their own. Now that he's fallen, instead of there being a new standard by which individuals who are known to be predators are shunned or not done business with, we have them propping up someone who Joe Biden could possibly be innocent. I have no dog in this fight, whether or not he is or not. I simply believe that whatever standard they apply to Democratic women should be applied to Republican women, because it shouldn't be about party. It should be about whether or not there are credible allegations. And he should at least, at the very minimum, be held to a standard where he would have to answer questions about it in the same way that they put those questions to every other Republican man who's been accused. And I'll just say one more thing. If you're a woman and you see what's happening to Tara Reade and you think you'd be any different, accuse a Democrat man and see how they treat you. Not all of us are treated equally, especially Republican women. I've seen the things that have been said against you from the very moment you first stepped out on the stage. I see the way they treat Melania Trump. I see the way they treat all of the women who work for the Trump campaign, and it's ridiculous. And if you think you're different, just let one of the signs that's behind you, Katrina, or a hat or something like that that says Trump, be a part of your persona, and see how quickly you will no longer be credible or believable or worthy of someone looking into something that you're saying happened to you. So that's a double standard, and it's the purview of the Democrats. It's a feature, not a bug, but it has to be pointed out.
Well, absolutely. And you're right. This is the type of behavior and lack of coverage that have kept women from speaking out against Harvey Weinstein, because he was powerful. And just when women all over the country were given hope after the Me Too movement, the situation with Joe Biden comes right on in and silences all the other women who wanted to find the courage to come forward, which the movement actually encouraged to come forward, because now is the time. And now we see women sort of being smacked down by the media and the Democratic left, when you have women like Alyssa Milano, who was, front and center at the Kavanaugh hearing, demanding, that he was guilty. And now she makes this exception for Joe Biden. And I think what it has done is it really has done a disservice to women, particularly those who have been victimized and abused and assaulted, and it pushed them right back into the shadows. So it's truly unfortunate. But with that, we're going to take another quick break, so stick around. We'll be right back.
I'm free to hug my family. I'm free to start over. This is the greatest day of my life. My heart is just bursting with gratitude. I want to thank President Donald John Trump. Woo! Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
And welcome back to Black Voices for Trump, Real Talk Online, back with Stacey Washington and Dr. Robin Armstrong. Let's talk immigration. Sensible immigration has always been a strong America First priority for President Trump, and recently he signed an executive order banning immigration for 60 days to ensure that when our economy reopens, American citizens are the first in line for jobs. Dr. Armstrong, since you're based in our home state of Texas, you know how illegal immigration has negatively impacted the communities and the economy, and for the safety of law-abiding Americans, for that matter. Now, from a border state, as a resident, do you think that this was the right move for President Trump, and why?
Absolutely, I do. I think it's important, and it's a right move because it helps protect those jobs. You know, just because of this self shutdown due to the COVID-19 virus, you know, all of these companies we've shut down these companies. They've been, you know, not functioning for the last few weeks. And so this has been devastating to those employees. It's been devastating to folks, especially in the African American and Hispanic communities and minority communities. It's been particularly devastating because those are a lot of jobs that have been lost there. It's hurt the entire country. So it's essential that we have a pause on all immigration and certainly shut down illegal immigration completely, because those jobs need to be available to American citizens. And I think that here again, we're seeing America First policy. And one thing I want to bring out that's important is I was talking with someone about this before, and he's a Democrat and he's a minority. And I brought up the point that when we say America First, that includes African Americans. That includes Hispanic Americans. That includes Asian Americans. American first, because we are just as much American as anyone. And so the policies that President Trump is pushing and stopping immigration and stopping illegal immigration, putting a pause on immigration now, that's helping all Americans, including minorities. And so I am so thankful that we have a president that is not governing and giving policy based on political correctness. I'm so happy that we have a president that is standing up for the American people, standing up for minority communities, producing jobs. Before this whole COVID-19 pandemic, you know, the African American unemployment rate was the lowest that it had ever been in history. And so now is the time. Our president is turning on his economic hat now, and he's saying, listen, we are dealing with this health crisis. We're in the process of dealing with it. We're letting, governors, use their federal powers, use the powers that they have according to federalism to get their governments moving again. While now we need to get our country moving again. Now we need to get our economy moving again. First step number one, protect our jobs. And we have to protect our jobs from illegal immigrants. We have to protect our job even from legal immigrants coming into the country now. That's step number one. I bet you every union worker would agree with that. I suspect that a lot of folks who are unemployed now would agree with that. I think the polls say that upwards of 80% of Americans believe that this is the right thing to do, That means there are a lot of Democrats agreeing with our president on this issue. And unfortunately, the Democrat Party continues to get, to smolder in this anti-Americanism, thinking that we have to protect Democrats. The governor of California, did a big press conference where he said he was actually going to provide some stimulus money that was gotten from the federal government. He's going to give that to illegal immigrants. Now that's crazy. And so that's unfortunate. And I'll tell you, this president is America first. This president's going to help bring those jobs back to America. We're going to bring manufacturing back to America as well. Obviously, we can't trust China anymore. And so we need to bring a lot of this manufacturing back to America as well. And so I'm really, it's been a horrible time. It's been a very difficult time from an economic perspective and certainly from a healthcare perspective as well. We've lost a lot of Americans. But I think it's going to give this president, with this outside the box thinking, it's going to give him the opportunity to really strengthen this country like it never has before. And so I think that it's time to do that. Shutting down immigration and illegal immigration is part of that. Bringing manufacturing jobs back to this country and away from China is a part of that. Fixing iPhones and manufacturing iPhones in America instead of China is all a part of that. And so I applaud him, and it is absolutely the right thing to do during this time.
You're absolutely right, Dr. Armstrong. The president, when he says America first, he automatically means Americans first. And a lot of people agree with his message. And we've seen that with, increased minority support in the 2016 campaign. And we're seeing it now also in the 2020 campaign. And I think that it's been one of those leadership vacuums that's been out there for a very long time. And Stacey, pointing out this twofold immigration issue that's disproportionately impact the Black community, whether it's illegal or legal, how do you think that the president's executive order suspending immigration for the next 60 days actually helps our community?
Well, Katrina, I think, first of all, Dr. Armstrong made a very important point about over 80% of Americans. That's bipartisan. It's more than a plurality of Americans. It means something that they support lessening lawful immigration. And it's two different subjects. We could talk for another 3 shows about illegal immigration, but the president's been fantastic on that, especially standing alone as watchman on the wall on that issue against Democrats who clearly side with not just communists in China, but illegal aliens who are not citizens of this country. But speaking of lawful immigration, there's always this accusation that's tossed around. You must be xenophobic. You must fear lawful immigrants. Well, that's absolutely not true. Here in the Show Me State, we're one of we have the largest Bosnian population in the entire country. And a couple of years ago, we were lauded for having the fastest growth immigration-wise, lawful immigrants coming into the state of Missouri at a faster pace than any other state. And during that time, I wrote an article for the Kansas City Star because there'd been this huge Pew Research poll, and it found that 6 in 10 Missourians wanted to lessen lawful immigration. So if you look at the sentiment across the country, Americans are not against immigration, but they are against immigration if the flow prevents assimilation and if the flow of immigrants coming in are taking jobs that lawful American-born citizens are not able to get access to. So basically replacing the American worker. Now, this is important to note because this is an issue where the Democrats claim to have really planted their flag and have Americans on their side. But the truth is, the Americans that are polled regularly routinely have more than 60% respond that they want less lawful immigration. It's not just the state of Missouri. So that's why this order by the president is coming at exactly the right time and proves that it's not about xenophobia for him either. President Trump is limiting immigration into the country for 60 days because Americans, 22 million or 26 million, are out of work. So the jobs that are available when they become available should go to Americans first, not because of hatred, but out of love for American citizens, and also because it just makes common sense. You take care of what's in your own house first before you give out to be generous to others. So I always look at the motivation behind what people are doing. And the Democrats side with people who come from socialist countries because their policies are moving towards socialism. So they want people to come in and vote for them, while Republicans are much more interested in preserving what we have here, which makes us a beacon, a light on the hill, a place where every continent has people who want to live in America, who want to be citizens here. We couldn't hold them all, so we have to be selective. But a 60-day pause, you know me, Katrina, I always want more. I wish the president would put a hold on it for 6 months, but he always has the right aspect in mind. He always kind of takes things a bite at a time. That's his business mentality coming through. After more than 4 decades in the business sector, President Trump knows how to be incremental while still being strategic. And so I'm glad he did this. It's just another thing we can tout when we're talking to friends and family about why they should vote for President Trump. Proof that he cares about not just Americans, but Black Americans specifically, because the majority of the immigration that comes into this country, those jobs that are being taken are people, Black people would be taking those jobs, but instead immigrants are taking them. So it's not really a competition with President Trump. He's siding with Americans, and I love that.
Absolutely. You know, and while President Trump is, you know, working day in and day out, as you mentioned, you know, not just to defeat the invisible enemy, but working on restoring the economy when all is said and done. It's going to be our job to make sure that he stays in the White House to do just that. So thank you for that analysis to the both of you, really. And before we get to final thoughts, here's how you at home can stand with us and fight to re-elect President Trump. To join this Black Voices for Trump coalition, text WOKE to 88022 and follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram at Black Voices for Trump. If you or your friends and family or your neighbors want to get involved right now to help re-elect President Trump, go to armyfortrump.com to sign up. And be sure to download our brand new Trump 2020 app from the App Store, available on iPhone and Android. Use the app to register for events like this, to join MAGA meetups or host them, and to become a volunteer, and you can win exclusive prizes. So we invite you to join us today. And Dr. Armstrong, Stacey, let's get to your final thoughts. I want you to leave your message with the American people tonight. Dr. Armstrong, let's start with you.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is thank you, Katrina, for having me on this evening. I appreciate that, and it's just an honor to be just to support this president. You know, he's been a great leader for our country, and I think that he's been a great leader for the African American community. And I think when it's all been said and done, you know, this president has created more jobs and more opportunities for African Americans that we've ever seen before. I mean, this president has put his neck on the line, you know, with his own base in a lot of ways. When you talk about prison reform, you know, there are African Americans who are now working and active and out in society where they were in prisons, you know, when they shouldn't have been, for nonviolent crimes. You know, we look at the small business loans that he's provided, even in this last stimulus bill, the small business loans that were provided to African Americans, the support that he's given to African American colleges and universities has been extraordinary. And so this president has been so good for the African American community. I think that it's time to see a great shift in the support. And I think that's going to happen in a lot of ways. I don't think they're going to talk about it. I don't think they're going to go on, you know, BET and talk about it or discuss it. They probably won't even discuss it with their neighbors. But I think what's going to happen is they're going to go into the voting booth, and you're going to see a lot of African Americans understand that and say, you know what, this president stood up for me, and so now I'm going to vote for him. And that's what I'm excited about.
I think you're right, Dr. Armstrong. Stacey, final thoughts?
Well, I just want to encourage people to go on the facts. I have, since becoming a Republican many years ago, I had to kind of reevaluate where I was coming from. And as a Christian, it has become so simple for me. I look at what the party platforms say, and then I compare the actions of the people who are representing those parties to what their party platforms say. And I mean, it's a real eye-opener. If you go online and go to the Democrats' party platform and read their plans for America, and then read the Republican Party platform and their plans for America, you get two very different views of what humanity can be in America and what liberty means and what the Constitution is. And then if you're a Christian, you got to really take it to the word. And so if you understand what God's word says, you know that there's no way you can support anyone who agrees with aborting babies or killing people because they're too old or too sick, or bringing people in from foreign countries and giving them taxpayer dollars while ignoring 50,000, I believe it is, homeless veterans on the streets in America. They've given everything they've got, some of them even their sanity. They've left their limbs in the sand, and they come back here and they're ignored by our government. That is not what God's word says we're supposed to do. So when you boil it down to that, when you take it to your moral center and make a decision on that, not your identity, not that your parents were Democrats and you can't not be a Democrat, not that being a Republican is a moral statement, but that party platforms are there for a reason. They mean something, and you had better darn well be prepared to explain yourself, because you will be held accountable at some point here or there. Then it becomes pretty simple. And also, coming from that perspective, Katrina, I can always explain why I'm voting for a candidate or why I'm not voting for a candidate, because boiling it down to that, the pro-life issue, whether or not human beings deserve to live, whether or not we should have foreign policy that leaves our people overseas fighting endless wars in the Middle East. President Trump opposes that. He's bringing Black Americans home to their families to stop being on endless deployments in the Middle East. I could go on, but I'll leave it with this. Decide who you're going to vote for based on what they've given you in the past. Democrats have been fleecing Black Americans for decades, and it's time it stopped. You should vote for the person who promises you something and then delivers. And if they don't deliver this next time, you vote for someone else. That's why I'm voting for President Trump. And I encourage people to read the platforms and reach out to me on Twitter @StaceyOnTheRight. I'm always willing to engage as long as you're not name calling.
Stacey Washington, Dr. Robin Armstrong, thank you both so much for joining the Real Talk Online this evening. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Join Team Trump online every evening, 7 days a week, and check out the schedule for our next episode, Black Voices for Trump, Real Talk Online. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.